My father had a separate bank account. We were struggling. I was supposed to be looking for Dad's insurance papers when I found the Wells Fargo statement tucked behind his tax documents. Mom had sent me to dig through his desk while he was at his Tuesday night church meeting, something about updating our health coverage for my college enrollment. The number at the bottom made me blink twice, $847,329.42. I sat there in his creaky office chair, staring at the paper like it might spontaneously combust. This had to be wrong. Maybe it was an old statement from before the hard times started, back when I was little. But no, the date read September 15th, 2023. Last month. My hands were shaking as I flipped through more pages. Deposit after deposit, going back years. His salary from the plant was there, sure, but also dividends, interest payments, transfers from what looked like investment accounts. Numbers I'd never seen in my life, flowing in month after month while we'd been eating fucking ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights a week. I could hear Mom in the kitchen right now, probably sorting through coupon inserts from the Sunday paper like she'd done every week for the past 8 years. Planning our grocery trips around store sales and clearance meat that was about to expire. She'd gotten so good at it that she could feed our family of 4 on $37 a week, and I'd watched her take pride in that skill. Genuine pride. The bank statements kept coming. Page after page of wealth accumulating while I'd worn the same 3 shirts to school for 2 years straight because money was tight. While my little sister Emma had cried about not being able to go on the 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip because we couldn't afford the $400. While Mom had worked herself into stress migraines pulling double shifts at the diner, coming home at 11 p.m. with swollen feet and grease stains on her uniform. I thought about last month, when I begged Dad to help with my tuition payment. Just $2,000 to keep me enrolled at State. He'd sat me down at the kitchen table with this grave expression and explained how the plant wasn't doing well, how his hours had been cut, how we all needed to tighten our belts even more. I'd ended up taking out another loan at 12% interest while he lectured me about fiscal responsibility and the value of hard work. 12% interest. On money I didn't even need to borrow. The front door slammed downstairs, Dad's truck rumbling into the driveway earlier than expected. I quickly photographed 4 pages with my phone, my heart hammering as I tried to put everything back exactly how I'd found it. The insurance papers. Right. I was supposed to be looking for insurance papers. Jessica. You find those documents yet? Dad's voice carried up the stairs. Still looking. I called back, my voice somehow steady despite feeling like I might throw up. I grabbed a random folder labeled auto insurance and headed downstairs, clutching it like a shield. Dad was already in the kitchen with Mom, kissing her cheek while she showed him some new coupon for laundry detergent she'd found. 50 cents off Tide if you bought 3 bottles. $847,000. And my mother was excited about saving 50 cents on laundry soap. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those numbers burned into my vision like I'd been staring at the sun. $847,329.42. More money than most people in our town would see in a lifetime, just sitting there while Dad complained about the price of milk going up 30 cents. By 6 a.m., I was dressed and driving to campus, but instead of heading to my morning statistics class, I parked behind the library and called the Wells Fargo customer service number I'd memorized from the statement header. Hi, I'm calling to check on my father's account balance, I said, trying to sound casual. Robert Mitchell, account ending in 7394. I'm sorry, but I can't provide account information unless you're an authorized user. Are you listed on the account? My stomach dropped. Could you just confirm if I am? Jessica Mitchell, DOB March 15, 2004. A pause. Keyboard clicking. No, I don't see you authorized on any accounts under that name. You'd need to have Mr. Mitchell add you or provide proper documentation. So he'd made sure to keep us all locked out. Of course he had. I hung up and immediately called my best friend Sarah. She'd been my roommate freshman year before I'd had to move back home to save money. Another one of Dad's cost-cutting measures that had felt like a knife in my chest at the time. Jess. Aren't you supposed to be in class? Sarah, I need you to look something up for me. You still work at your mom's real estate office, right? Yeah, why? You sound weird. Can you check property records for my dad? Robert Mitchell, 847, Pine Street. I need to know what our house is worth. Sarah paused. Okay, this is officially concerning me. What's going on? Just, please. I'll explain later. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text that made my blood pressure spike even higher. Jess, your house is worth $380,000 easy, maybe more. It's been paid off since 2019 according to county records. Your dad owns it free and clear. Why didn't you know that? Free and clear. We owned our house outright, and he was still making mom clip coupons like we were one missed paycheck away from eviction. I thought about all the times he talked about our mortgage payment when explaining why we couldn't afford things. The family vacation to Florida Emma had begged for 3 summers ago. My senior class ring that I'd wanted so badly but just wasn't in the budget. All lies. Every single financial excuse had been a lie. I was sitting in my car in the campus parking lot, shaking with rage, when I remembered something else. Last spring, when Emma had gotten accepted to that summer art program she'd applied for on a whim. 6 weeks at a real art school in Chicago, working with professional instructors. She'd been so excited, bouncing around the kitchen with the acceptance letter, until Dad sat her down and gently explained that the $3,000 tuition just wasn't feasible right now. Maybe next year, when things were better. I'd watched my 16-year-old sister nod like she understood, like she was being mature about our family's financial limitations. She'd folded up that letter and never mentioned the program again. But I'd seen her looking at the art school's website for weeks afterward, scrolling through photos of students working on sculptures and paintings, dreaming about something she believed was impossible. $3,000. He denied her dreams over $3,000 while sitting on almost $1 million. I started the car and headed home. It was time to have a conversation with dear old Dad. I found Dad in the garage when I got home, tinkering with his truck engine like he did every Wednesday afternoon. The same truck he'd been driving for 12 years because it still runs fine, no point in wasting money on something new. Except now I knew he could have bought a brand new Ford F-150 with cash and barely dented his secret fortune. "Hey kiddo," he said without looking up, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. "Shouldn't you be in class? We need to talk." I kept my voice level, but my heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it over the radio playing softly in the background. "About what?" He finally glanced up, squinting at me in that way he did when he was about to deliver one of his lectures about responsibility or priorities. "About the Wells Fargo account." The wrench in his hand went completely still. For just a second, something flickered across his face, panic, maybe, or calculation. Then his expression smoothed back into confused innocence. "What Wells Fargo account?" "Jess, we bank at First National, you know that." The lie came so easily, so naturally, that it actually took my breath away. I'd expected denial, maybe even anger, but not this smooth, practiced deception. How many times had he lied to us like this? How many conversations had I had with him where every word out of his mouth was carefully constructed bullshit? "The account with $847,000 in it," I said. "The one you've been hiding while Mom works herself to death at the diner." Dad set down the wrench very carefully and turned to face me fully. His whole demeanor changed, the folksy, "ah shucks" mechanic act disappeared, replaced by something colder. More calculating. "You went through my private papers. Mom asked me to find the insurance documents. You know, for my college enrollment. The one you can't afford to help with. That's different, Jessica. You don't understand how finances work. That money isn't just sitting there for fun, it's invested, it's working, it's our family's security for the future." I stared at him. Security for the future. "Dad, Emma's been wearing the same winter coat for 4 years. The zipper's broken and she safety pins it closed. Mom's been putting off going to the dentist for 2 years because we can't afford the copay. What kind of future are you securing exactly? The kind where we don't end up like your Uncle Terry, spending everything as fast as it comes in and ending up with nothing." His voice was getting harder, more defensive. "You kids don't remember what it was like when I was growing up. My father made good money at the steel mill, but he pissed it all away on stupid purchases. Boats, fancy cars, vacations we couldn't afford. When the mill closed, we lost everything. Everything, Jessica. So you decided to traumatize us instead. You let Emma believe she wasn't worth $3,000 for art camp. You made Mom think she had to choose between groceries and keeping the lights on. I made sure this family would never be vulnerable like that again." Dad's voice cracked like a whip. "Do you have any idea how many people lose everything because they get comfortable, because they start thinking money will always be there? I've been protecting you kids from that kind of disappointment. By disappointing us constantly instead." Dad grabbed another tool from his workbench, his movements sharp and agitated. "You're 19 years old, Jessica. You don't know anything about real responsibility yet. When you have a family of your own to protect, maybe you'll understand why a man has to make hard choices." Hard choices. My voice was rising now, months of suppressed frustration finally boiling over. The only hard choice here was deciding to lie to your family every single day for years. Do you know what kids at school used to say about Emma's clothes? Do you know how many times I didn't eat lunch because I was too embarrassed to pull out the generic peanut butter sandwiches while everyone else bought food from the cafeteria? Dad's jaw tightened. That builds character. That builds shame. Character. I felt something break loose inside my chest, years of swallowed humiliation finally finding its voice. "You want to talk about character, Dad? Let me tell you about character. Character is Mom working a double shift on her birthday because she thought we needed the money. Character is Emma babysitting the Henderson kids every weekend for 2 years to save up $60 for a homecoming dress. Character is me eating ramen noodles for lunch every day my senior year because I gave Mom my grocery money when she was crying over the electric bill." Dad's face was flushing red now, that vein in his temple starting to throb the way it did when he was really angry. "You think money solves everything? You think if I just thrown cash around, you kids would be better people? I think if you'd been honest, we wouldn't hate you right now." The words hung in the garage air between us like something poisonous. Dad actually stepped back, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "That's what this is about, isn't it?" I continued, my voice getting steadier as his got shakier. "Control. You liked having us all dependent on you, liked being the one who decided what we could and couldn't have. You liked playing God with our lives." "That's not," Dad started, but I cut him off. 2 weeks ago, Emma asked me if she was stupid for wanting to apply to art school next year. She said maybe she should just focus on realistic careers instead. Do you know what that did to me? Listening to my sister call her dreams unrealistic because you've spent her entire life convincing her that our family can't afford anything good? Dad slammed his hand down on the workbench, making me jump. "Dreams don't pay the bills, Jessica. Dreams don't keep food on the table or a roof over your head. But $800,000 might." We stared at each other across the garage, both breathing hard. The afternoon sunlight streaming through the dirty window highlighted the dust motes floating between us like tiny fragments of everything that was breaking apart. "I want you to pay for my college," I said finally. "All of it. And Emma's art camp next summer. And Mom gets to quit that goddamn diner job and go back to school like she always wanted to." Dad laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You want to give me orders now? In my own house? Your paid-off house?" His face went white. "How did you?" Sarah looked it up. "County records, Dad. Public information. Just like how your salary at the plant is public record too. $47,000 a year, but somehow you've saved almost $1 million in 10 years. That's some pretty impressive math." I watched him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. The fact that he was calculating instead of explaining told me everything I needed to know about what kind of man my father really was. There are legal ways to accumulate wealth that don't involve. I don't care if it's legal. I exploded. I care that it's sick. You've been hoarding money like some kind of dragon while your own children went without basic things that would have made their lives better. I provided for this family. You provided the bare minimum while stockpiling everything else. That's not providing, Dad. That's psychological torture. The words seemed to echo in the garage. Dad was staring at me like I'd grown a second head, like he couldn't comprehend that his little girl was talking back to him this way. You're going to write me a check for my tuition, I said quietly. Tomorrow. Or I'm telling Mom about the account. The threat hit him like a physical blow. Dad's face went through about 5 different emotions in 2 seconds: shock, anger, fear, then something that looked almost like relief before settling into cold fury. You don't want to do that, Jessica. Don't I? I crossed my arms, trying to project more confidence than I felt. Because I'm thinking Mom deserves to know why she's been clipping coupons for 8 years while you've been sitting on enough money to buy 3 houses. Your mother couldn't handle that kind of information. She doesn't understand financial planning the way. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop with the condescending bullshit, Dad. Mom managed a whole accounting department before she married you. She understands money just fine. What she doesn't understand is being lied to by her own husband. Dad wiped his hands on his jeans, buying time. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head, trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation. Let's say hypothetically I have some savings set aside, he said carefully. Money that's earmarked for specific purposes. Your college tuition isn't necessarily the best use of those funds when student loans are readily available at reasonable rates. Reasonable rates? My voice cracked. Dad, I'm paying 12% interest. Credit cards have better rates than that. That's an important lesson about reading the fine print before you sign financial documents. I stared at him in complete disbelief. He was actually trying to turn this into a teaching moment about fiscal responsibility while defending his decision to let me go into high-interest debt unnecessarily. You're unbelievable, I whispered. You're actually going to stand there and lecture me about financial literacy while you've been committing fraud. Fraud? Dad's voice sharpened. That's a very serious accusation, young lady. What would you call lying about your financial situation to your family? What would you call claiming you can't afford things when you absolutely can? What would you call careful budgeting and long-term planning? The casual way he said it made my stomach turn. Like this was all perfectly normal, perfectly reasonable. Like I was being dramatic for expecting honesty from my own father. Does Mom know about Uncle Terry? I asked suddenly. Dad's expression flickered. What about Uncle Terry? Your whole sob story about Grandpa losing everything when the steel mill closed. Does Mom know that Uncle Terry still lives in the same house he grew up in? The one Grandpa paid off in 1987. Because I called Aunt Linda last Christmas, Dad. Uncle Terry never lost anything. He's been running his own plumbing business for 20 years. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Dad's face had gone completely blank, that practiced mask he wore when he was caught in something he couldn't easily explain away. You called Linda. His voice was very quiet now. I call her every Christmas. And Easter. And her birthday. You know, like family does when they actually care about each other. I stepped closer to him. So which story is the lie, Dad? The one you told me about Uncle Terry, or the one you've been telling yourself to justify hoarding money while your kids wore second-hand clothes to school? Dad sat down heavily on his work stool, suddenly looking older than his 52 years. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd finally gotten through to him. Maybe he was going to explain himself, or apologize, or show some hint of the father I remembered from before the hard times started. Instead, he looked up at me with eyes that had gone cold and calculating. If you tell your mother about this, I'll cut you off completely. College fund, health insurance, car insurance, cell phone. Everything. You'll be on your own. I'm already on my own, Dad. I've been on my own since you decided your secret bank account was more important than your family. The threat hung in the garage air like a toxic cloud. I stared at my father, this stranger wearing my dad's face, and felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. The last thread of hope that maybe, somehow, this could be worked out as a family had just snapped. You know what? I said, pulling out my phone. Let's call Mom right now. Let's see how she feels about your financial planning. Dad lunged forward and grabbed my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me from dialing. Jessica, you need to think about this carefully. Your mother has anxiety issues. This kind of shock could send her into one of her episodes. Mom's anxiety. Of course he'd weaponize that. The anxiety attacks that started 3 years ago when she was working 70-hour weeks and surviving on 4 hours of sleep a night. The ones that sent her to the ER twice because she thought she was having a heart attack. The anxiety that Dad always blamed on Mom being high-strung, instead of, oh I don't know, completely fucking exhausted. Her episodes, I repeated slowly, that started when she was working herself into the ground because you convinced her we were broke. Mental health is complicated. Get your hand off me. My voice came out deadly quiet, and something in my tone made him release my wrist immediately. Mom's anxiety isn't complicated, Dad. It's called being lied to by your husband for 8 years while you sacrifice your health for a family that doesn't actually need your sacrifice. I backed toward the garage door, putting space between us. Dad looked like he wanted to say something else, but I held up my hand to stop him. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You have 24 hours to tell Mom the truth yourself. All of it. The Wells Fargo account, the paid-off house, the investment accounts I'm sure you have, and exactly how much money you've been hiding while she worked double shifts. And if I don't, then I will. And I won't be nearly as diplomatic about it as you could be. Dad's face was cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Jessica, please. Think about what you're asking here. Your mother's mental state. Stop using Mom's anxiety as a shield for your lies. I exploded. You created her anxiety. You did this to her. That's not fair. Fair. I laughed, and it came out harsh and bitter. You want to talk about fair? Emma has been saving birthday money for 3 years to buy herself a laptop for digital art. 3 years, Dad. She's got about $400 saved up, and she keeps researching these ancient refurbished computers because she thinks that's all she can afford. Meanwhile, you could buy her a top-of-the-line MacBook Pro with your pocket change. Dad flinched like I'd slapped him. Emma doesn't need expensive equipment to. To what? To pursue her dreams? To develop her talent? Or do you think keeping her limited builds character too? You don't understand the bigger picture here, Jessica. That money represents security for this family's future. What future? I cut him off. The future where Mom's anxiety gets so bad she ends up hospitalized. The future where Emma gives up on art because she thinks we can't afford her education. The future where I graduate college $70,000 in debt because my father chose to play pretend poverty instead of helping his own kids. Dad stood up from his work stool, and for a moment I thought he might actually try to physically intimidate me. Instead, he walked over to his tool cabinet and started organizing wrenches that were already perfectly organized. Your generation expects everything handed to you, he said to the tools. You don't understand the value of working for what you want. We've been working, Dad. Emma babysits every weekend. I've had a job since I was 15. Mom works more hours than you do. The only person in this family who hasn't been working for what they want is you. You've just been hoarding it. He turned around, his face flushed red again. That money is insurance against disaster. Against unemployment, medical emergencies, economic collapse. It's insurance against having to trust your own family. I shot back. You're so terrified of being vulnerable with us that you'd rather let us suffer than admit you care enough to take care of us properly. I have taken care of you. You've taken care of your money. There's a difference. Dad slammed a wrench down on the workbench. Enough. You're 18 years old, Jessica. You don't get to come into my house and make demands about money you didn't earn. 19, I corrected. And this isn't about demands, Dad. This is about basic human decency. Something you apparently forgot how to practice. I turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back at him. 24 hours, I repeated. Tell her yourself, or I will. And Dad? If you try to spin this as anything other than exactly what it is, I'll make sure she sees every bank statement I photographed. His face went white. You photographed. I'm not stupid. And I'm not going away. I paused in the doorway. Oh, and I'm driving over to Emma's school to pick her up. I think it's time she knew why she really can't have nice things. Jessica, no. But I was already walking away, leaving him standing alone in his garage with his precious tools and his even more precious secrets. I didn't actually drive to Emma's school. I sat in my car at the end of our driveway for 20 minutes, shaking too hard to put the key in the ignition. The adrenaline from confronting Dad was wearing off, leaving behind something that felt like grief mixed with rage. Instead, I drove to Sarah's apartment near campus. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside without asking questions. Okay, spill, she said, shoving a cup of coffee into my hands. And start from the beginning because you look like you've seen a ghost. I told her everything. The bank statements, the confrontation, Dad's threats, all of it. Sarah listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. Jesus Christ, Jess. That's not just lying, that's like psychological abuse or something. Is it though? I stared into my coffee. I mean, we had food and shelter and clothes. It's not like he was beating us. He was letting your mom work herself sick for no reason. He watched your sister give up on her dreams because she thought your family was poor. That's fucked up, and you know it. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Did you find the insurance papers? Dad said you two talked but you seemed upset. Everything okay? I showed Sarah the message. He's already doing damage control. What are you going to tell her? Before I could answer, another text came through, this one from Dad. We need to discuss this like adults. Come home so we can work something out. Then another, don't do anything rash, Jessica. Think about Emma. Oh, fuck that, Sarah said, reading over my shoulder. He's using your sister as emotional leverage now. My phone rang. Dad's contact photo, him and me at my high school graduation, both smiling like we didn't have a care in the world. I let it go to voicemail, then immediately got another call. He's panicking, I said. Good. He should be. Sarah leaned back on her couch. So what's the plan? Are you really going to tell your mom? I don't know. Maybe. I rubbed my temples where a headache was starting to build. What if he's right about her anxiety? What if this breaks her? Jess, keeping secrets this big is what's breaking her. She's been blaming herself for not being able to provide better for you guys. How is that fair? Another text from Dad, I can help with some of your tuition. Let's discuss this rationally. Some of your tuition, Sarah read aloud. This man has almost $1 million and he's offering to help with some of your college costs. The audacity is actually impressive. I thought about Mom at the kitchen table last night, carefully writing out a grocery list organized by store layout to maximize efficiency. Budgeting $37 to feed 4 people for a week while Dad sat across from her, probably calculating investment returns in his head. I need to see the other accounts, I said suddenly. What other accounts? The investment portfolios. He mentioned them in the garage, and the bank statements showed transfers. If he's got more money stashed away. I trailed off as the implications hit me. Sarah, what if it's not just savings? What if he's been hiding income too? Sarah's eyes widened. Like, tax evasion? Maybe. Or maybe he's been getting inheritance money, or settlements, or who knows what else while crying poverty to us. I stood up and started pacing. I need to find out how much we're really talking about here. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Emma. Mom's making your favorite dinner. She says you had a fight with Dad. Are you coming home? The text hit me like a punch to the stomach. Emma's casual mention of Mom making my favorite dinner, probably her special chicken and rice casserole that cost about $4 to make and could stretch for leftovers. Mom's way of trying to smooth over family conflicts through food, like she always did. I have to go home, I said. Emma doesn't know anything yet, and Mom's probably going crazy wondering what happened. Are you going to tell them tonight? I stared at my phone, watching the dots appear and disappear as Emma typed another message, then deleted it, then typed again. Finally, Dad's been in the garage for 2 hours. Did something bad happen? I think something bad has been happening for 8 years, I said to Sarah. Tonight we're just finally going to talk about it. The drive home felt like approaching a car accident in slow motion. Every familiar landmark, the grocery store where Mom spent hours comparing prices, the thrift shop where we bought most of our clothes, the diner where she was probably supposed to work tomorrow night, looked different now. Like I was seeing our whole neighborhood through new eyes. Dad's truck was still in the garage when I pulled up, but I could see him through the kitchen window, sitting at the table with Mom and Emma. They looked like a normal family having dinner together. The kind of family I'd thought we were until about 6 hours ago. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering courage. Through the window, I could see Emma showing Mom something on her phone, probably art she'd found online. Mom was smiling and nodding, engaging with Emma's passion the way she always did, even though she had no idea her husband could afford to send Emma to any art school in the country. My phone buzzed with one more text from Dad. I transferred $5,000 to your checking account. We can discuss the rest tomorrow. $5,000. Like a bribe. Like hush money. I screenshotted the text and sent it to Sarah with a message, evidence. Then I turned off my phone, got out of the car, and walked toward the house where my family was waiting to find out who we really were. I walked into the kitchen and immediately felt the weight of 3 pairs of eyes on me. Mom had indeed made her chicken and rice casserole, the smell of paprika and onions filling the room with false comfort. Emma was sitting cross-legged in her chair, fork halfway to her mouth, frozen like she was watching a soap opera unfold in real time. There's my girl, Mom said, her voice artificially bright. I kept a plate warm for you in the oven. Dad was cutting his chicken with surgical precision, not looking up. Jessica and I just had a misunderstanding about her college planning. Nothing that can't be worked out. The casual lie rolled off his tongue so smoothly that I almost admired the skill. Almost. Actually, I said, pulling out the chair across from him, we had a conversation about honesty. Didn't we, Dad? His knife scraped against the plate. Jessica. What kind of honesty? Emma asked, her artistic intuition picking up on the undercurrents in the room. She'd always been sensitive to family tension, probably from years of watching Mom stress about money. Well, I said, accepting the plate Mom handed me, Dad was just explaining to me how important it is to be transparent with family about financial matters. Right, Dad? Mom settled back into her chair, smoothing her worn diner uniform. She was between shifts, the dinner crowd ended at 8 p.m., but she'd be back at 5 a.m. for the breakfast rush. Oh honey, you know your father handles all that complicated investment stuff. I just balanced the checkbook. Investment stuff. My fork stopped midway to my mouth. What investment stuff? Dad's warning look could have melted steel. Your mother's referring to my 401k through the plant. Standard retirement planning. Right, the 401k, I said slowly. Hey Mom, you know what's interesting? I was talking to Sarah today about how her parents are planning for retirement, and she mentioned something about compound interest. Like how if you put away just a few $100s a month for 10 years, it can grow into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Emma perked up. Really? That's like math magic. It really is, I agreed, keeping my eyes on Dad. For example, if someone was making, say, $47,000 a year but somehow managed to save $800,000 in about 10 years, that would be pretty magical math, wouldn't it? The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's fork clinked against her plate as she set it down. 800,000. Emma's voice cracked slightly. Dollars? Dad's face was cycling through colors like a mood ring. Jessica, you're talking about hypothetical numbers that don't. Oh, but they're not hypothetical, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. I took pictures. Pictures of what? Mom's voice had gotten very quiet. The tone she used when she was trying to stay calm but something was seriously wrong. Of Dad's Wells Fargo statements. The account he's been keeping secret while you work yourself to death at the diner. The words hung in the air like a grenade with a pin pulled. Emma's mouth fell open. Mom went completely still, her face draining of color. Jessica Marie Mitchell, Dad's voice cracked like a whip, you put that phone away right now. No. I held it up, the screen showing the first bank statement I'd photographed. Mom, Emma, look at this number at the bottom. That's Dad's secret savings account. $847,329.42. Emma leaned forward, squinting at the screen. That can't be real. Mom hadn't moved. She was staring at Dad like she'd never seen him before in her life. Karen, Dad started, his voice gentler now, let me explain. You let me work Easter Sunday, Mom whispered. Last year. I worked Easter Sunday because you said we needed the holiday pay for Emma's school supplies. The devastation in her voice cut through me like a blade. This was why Dad had been so afraid of telling her. Not because she couldn't handle it, but because she could handle it all too well. Emma's fork clattered to her plate. Mom worked Easter Sunday for school supplies that we didn't actually need. Dad's hands were shaking now. Karen, please. Let me explain this properly. This isn't what Jessica is making it seem like. Then what is it? Mom's voice was deadly calm, the way it got right before she completely lost her temper. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I've been killing myself at that diner while you've been sitting on enough money to buy the whole restaurant. The money isn't liquid, Dad said desperately. It's invested in long-term funds, retirement accounts, college savings bonds. College savings bonds? I pulled up another photo on my phone. This is a regular savings account, Dad. Look, Mom, it shows transfers in and out. He's been moving money around like it's his personal piggy bank. Mom stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the kitchen floor. I need to see those statements. All of them. Karen, you're getting upset over something you don't fully understand. Don't. Mom's voice cut through his explanation like a knife. Don't you dare tell me I don't understand money, Robert. I managed a whole accounting department before I married you. I know exactly what these numbers mean. Emma was looking back and forth between our parents like she was watching a tennis match. So we're not poor. The simple question from my 16-year-old sister hung in the air like an accusation. Out of the mouths of babes. We've never been poor, I said, keeping my eyes on Dad. The house is paid off. Has been since 2019. Dad makes $47,000 a year at the plant, but somehow he's accumulated almost $1 million. $1 million? Emma's voice cracked. Are you serious right now? Mom sank back into her chair, her face pale. Robert. Please tell me there's an explanation for this that doesn't involve you lying to me for 8 years. Dad ran his hands through his hair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. It started as an emergency fund. After what happened to my father when the steel mill closed. Your father never worked at a steel mill, I interrupted. Uncle Terry told me last Christmas. Grandpa ran a hardware store until he retired. Mom's head snapped toward Dad. You told me your family lost everything when you were young. That's why you were so careful with money. That was a metaphor. About being careful. A metaphor. Mom's voice was rising now. A metaphor that convinced me to work 70-hour weeks. A metaphor that made me cry myself to sleep worrying about Emma's school clothes. Emma had gone completely silent, her face cycling through confusion, hurt, and something that looked like betrayal. Dad, last month you said we couldn't afford new art supplies for my portfolio class. I've been using watercolors from sophomore year because the tubes are all dried up. Honey, you don't need expensive supplies to. Stop, Emma said quietly. Just stop talking, Dad. Please. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Mrs. Henderson's dog barking next door. Normal neighborhood sounds that felt surreal against the backdrop of our family imploding. Mom picked up my phone and started scrolling through the bank statement photos, her face getting paler with each swipe. These deposits. Robert, these aren't just from your salary. Where is this other money coming from? Dad shifted in his chair, not meeting her eyes. Investments. Dividends. Some inheritance money from my Aunt Helen that came in over the years. Aunt Helen. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Your Aunt Helen who died 3 years ago. You told me she left everything to charity. She did leave most of it to charity. There were just some small personal bequests that. How much? Mom's knuckles were white where she gripped my phone. Karen, the specific amounts aren't important. How much, Robert? Dad looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. 47,000. In installments over 2 years. Emma made a small sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. That's more than Dad makes in a year. And you called it small. The number hit the room like a physical blow. $47,000, more than what Dad made in an entire year at the plant, and he'd hidden it from us while Mom rationed our groceries down to the penny. 47,000, Mom repeated, her voice hollow. She set my phone down very carefully on the table. Robert, I worked a double shift on my birthday last year because you said we couldn't afford to lose the tips from the Saturday dinner rush. Karen. My birthday, she continued, talking over him. I spent my 43rd birthday serving coffee and cleaning tables because my husband told me we needed every dollar we could get. Emma was staring at Dad like he'd grown horns. When Aunt Helen died, you made us send a card instead of flowers because you said we couldn't afford the delivery fee. It was $12, Dad. $12. I watched Dad's face crumble as the full weight of his deception started hitting him. But instead of the remorse I expected to see, what flickered across his expression looked more like annoyance. Like he was irritated that we weren't understanding his brilliant financial strategy. You're all missing the point, he said, his voice taking on that lecturing tone that made my skin crawl. That money represents security. Stability. Do you know how many families would kill to have this kind of financial cushion? Do you know how many families would kill to have this kind of honesty? Mom shot back. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making all the plates jump. I have provided for this family. You've never missed a meal, never been evicted, never had to worry about keeping the lights on. Because I worked myself into panic attacks making sure we never missed a payment. Mom's voice finally broke, 8 years of suppressed exhaustion pouring out. I gave myself an ulcer last spring worrying about Emma's prom dress. $48 at Goodwill, and I lost sleep for a week wondering if we could afford it. Emma's face went white. Mom, you have an ulcer. Stress-induced, Mom said, not taking her eyes off Dad. The doctor said it was from chronic anxiety. I thought it was because we were living paycheck to paycheck. We were living paycheck to paycheck, Dad insisted. My paycheck. The rest of that money was never meant for day-to-day expenses. Then what was it meant for? I demanded. Emma's college fund. Oh wait, you told her she should focus on realistic career options instead of art school. My education. Nope, you're letting me rack up debt at 12% interest. Mom's health. She's been putting off dental work for 2 years. Dad's jaw worked silently for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. That money is meant for real emergencies. Medical catastrophes. Job loss. Economic collapse. Not for frivolous spending on art supplies and college dreams. Frivolous. Emma's voice cracked on the word. You think my art is frivolous? I think teenage hobbies shouldn't dictate family financial decisions. The words hit Emma like a slap. I watched my sister's face cycle through hurt, anger, and finally something that looked like resolve. She stood up from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. For the record, Dad, I got accepted to the Chicago Institute of Art's summer intensive program. Full scholarship. But I turned it down because I thought our family couldn't afford the travel expenses. Emma's voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. It was $300 for transportation and housing. $300 that apparently exists 47,000 times over in your secret account. She walked toward the kitchen door, then turned back. Oh, and Dad. I'm not 16 anymore. I'm 17. You missed my birthday last month because you were working overtime. Except now I know you weren't working overtime, were you? You were probably checking your investment portfolio. Emma left the kitchen, and a moment later we heard her bedroom door slam. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot, leaving the three of us sitting in the wreckage of our family dinner. Mom sat in the silence for a long moment, staring at the half-eaten casserole on her plate like it held answers. Then she stood up and walked to the kitchen junk drawer, the one where she kept coupons, calculator, and the little notebook where she tracked every expense down to the penny. "I want to show you something, Robert," she said, pulling out the worn spiral notebook. Her voice was eerily calm now, which somehow felt more terrifying than when she'd been yelling. "This is from last November." She flipped to a page covered in her careful handwriting and started reading aloud. "November 3rd, Jess needs winter boots, hers have holes. Paycheck Friday is $847 after taxes. Rent is $650, groceries budgeted at $120, electric bill estimated $85. That leaves negative $8 before gas, phone, or Emma's school lunch money." Dad was staring at his hands. "Karen. I'm not finished." Mom turned the page. November 5th, picked up extra Sunday shift at diner. Tips were good, made $73. Can afford Jessica's boots if I skip lunch for the next week and walk to work instead of driving. My chest felt tight listening to her read. I remembered those boots, cheap ones from Walmart that gave me blisters but kept my feet dry. I'd been so grateful for them. November 12th, Mom continued, her voice getting stronger. Emma asked about art camp applications that are due in January. Looked it up online, $3,000 for 6 weeks. Cried in the bathroom at work for 20 minutes. Decided to tell her maybe next year when things are better. Emma's footsteps creaked overhead as she paced in her room. The sound made everything feel more real somehow, more immediate. "Do you want to hear December?" Mom asked, waving the notebook. "January? I can read you 8 years of this, Robert. 8 years of me calculating whether we could afford a $5 bottle of shampoo. 8 years of me lying awake at night running numbers in my head, trying to figure out how to make $40 stretch for a week of groceries." She threw the notebook on the table, pages fluttering. "While you were sitting on $800,000. Dad finally looked up. The money was never supposed to be touched. It was insurance. Insurance against what? Your family being happy. Insurance against ending up like everyone else in this town." Dad exploded, his composure finally cracking. "Look around, Karen. Half our neighbors are one paycheck away from losing their houses. Tom Peterson got laid off last spring and had to sell his truck. The Henderson's daughter couldn't afford state college and ended up at community college instead. And that would have been the end of the world?" I asked. "Yes." Dad slammed his palm on the table again. "Because once you start sliding backward, you never stop. You get comfortable spending money on wants instead of needs, and before you know it, you're broke and desperate and dependent on other people's charity." Mom was staring at him like he was speaking a foreign language. "Robert, Emma is talking about giving up art because she thinks we can't afford supplies. That's not preventing us from sliding backward. That's pushing your own daughter off a cliff. She'll thank me when she's 30 and has a stable career instead of starving in some artist's garret in New York." The casual dismissal of Emma's dreams hit me like a physical blow. "She's incredibly talented, Dad. Her art teacher says she has a real gift. Gifts don't pay mortgages. We don't have a mortgage." I exploded. "The house is paid off. You could let Emma pursue art for the next 10 years and we'd still have more money than most families see in a lifetime." Dad's face was flushed red now, that vein in his temple throbbing. "You kids don't understand what real financial pressure feels like. You don't know what it's like to be responsible for other people's survival. And you don't know what it's like to watch your mother work herself sick for nothing," I shot back. "You don't know what it's like to watch your sister give up on her dreams because her father values money more than her happiness." Mom stood up abruptly, her chair falling backward. "I need air." She walked out the back door, leaving Dad and me alone in the kitchen with the weight of everything that had been said. Through the window, I could see her sitting on the porch steps, her head in her hands. "Look what you've done," Dad said quietly. "Your mother is devastated." "I didn't do this," I said, my voice deadly calm. "You did this. 8 years ago when you decided to lie to us. Every day since then when you chose to keep lying." Dad picked up Mom's notebook and started flipping through it, his expression unreadable. "She's always been dramatic about money. Even when we were first married, she'd worry about spending $5 on a movie ticket." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. He was reading 8 years of Mom's careful budgeting, her sacrifice, her genuine fear about our family's financial stability, and dismissing it as dramatics. "Get out," I said softly. "Excuse me. Get out of this kitchen. Go to your garage, go to your truck, I don't care. But get away from me before I say something we'll both regret." Dad looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. He closed the notebook and headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. "This money has kept this family safe for 8 years, Jessica. I hope you remember that when you're dealing with the consequences of destroying it." After he left, I sat alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of our family dinner and the echo of 8 years' worth of lies finally dragging themselves into the light. I found Mom on the back porch 20 minutes later, still sitting on the steps with her head in her hands. The November air was getting cold, and she was only wearing her thin diner uniform, the polyester blend that never quite kept her warm during the late shifts. "Mom." I sat down beside her, close enough to feel her shaking. "Are you okay?" She let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Am I okay? Jessica, I don't even know what reality is anymore." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, feeling how thin she'd gotten over the past year. All those skipped lunches to save money, all those times she'd given Dad and Emma the bigger portions while claiming she wasn't that hungry. "I keep thinking about stupid things," Mom continued, her voice muffled. "Like last Christmas when I spent 3 hours at 4 different stores comparing prices on a winter coat for Emma. 3 hours, Jess. I finally found one at the outlet mall marked down to $38, and I was so proud of myself for being such a smart shopper." She lifted her head to look at me, and I could see the tracks of mascara down her cheeks. $38. Your father spends more than that on lunch some weeks, and I was treating it like a major family financial decision. A thought hit me suddenly, cold and sharp. Mom, what did Dad tell you about his overtime pay? What do you mean? All those late nights when he said he was working extra shifts at the plant. Where did that money go? Mom's face went pale. He said overtime was unpredictable. Sometimes there wasn't any, sometimes it was good. He handled all of that directly. She paused, understanding dawning in her expression. Oh my God. There was never any overtime, was there? I pulled out my phone and scrolled to one of the bank statement photos, zooming in on the deposit dates. Look at this, Mom. Regular deposits every 2 weeks, his normal salary. But then there are these other deposits, random amounts on random days. And they're all listed as transfer from savings or investment dividend. Mom stared at the screen, her financial training from her old accounting job kicking in. These transfers. Jessica, some of these are for thousands of dollars. He's been moving money between accounts to make it look like irregular income. So when he came home and said, good news, overtime was decent this week, he was actually just lying. Mom finished. He was taking money from his secret accounts and pretending it was earned income. Her voice got harder. Do you know how many times I thanked him for working those extra hours? How many times I felt guilty that he was sacrificing his free time for our family? We sat in silence for a moment, watching Mrs. Henderson's cat pick its way across our back fence. Normal suburban evening stuff that felt surreal against the backdrop of everything falling apart. Mom, there's something else. I took a deep breath. Dad threatened me today. He said if I told you about the money, he'd cut me off completely. No college help, no insurance, nothing. Mom's head snapped toward me. He threatened you. And he tried to bribe me first. He transferred $5,000 to my account right before I came home. He what? Mom's voice was deadly quiet now. I showed her the text from Dad about the transfer. Mom read it twice, her expression cycling through disbelief, rage, and something that looked almost like disgust. He tried to buy your silence. That's what it felt like. Mom stood up suddenly, her hands clenched into fists. Where is he now? In the garage, I think. Good. She walked toward the back door, then stopped and turned around. Jessica, I need you to send me all those photos. Every bank statement, every piece of evidence you found. Can you do that? Of course, but Mom. I'm going to call my sister Linda tomorrow morning. She still works at that law firm downtown, and I think it's time I understood exactly what my legal options are here. The determination in her voice was something I hadn't heard in years. This wasn't the exhausted, anxious woman who'd been clipping coupons and working double shifts. This was the woman who'd once managed an entire accounting department, who'd put herself through college while working nights as a waitress. Are you thinking about divorce? I asked quietly. Mom looked back toward the garage where we could see Dad's silhouette moving around. I'm thinking about a lot of things, honey. But first, I need to understand exactly how much money we're talking about, and how long this has been going on. She paused, her hand on the door handle. Jessica, did your father ever mention anything about life insurance policies? Investment accounts in the kids' names? Anything like that? Not to me. Why? Because if he's been hiding this much money, I'm wondering what else he's been hiding. Mom's voice was grim. Your father is methodical about everything. This level of deception doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen in isolation. The implications of what she was saying hit me like a truck. If Dad had been systematically lying about their finances for 8 years, what other lies had we been living with? Tomorrow, Mom continued, you and I are going to have a very long conversation with your father. And this time, I want to see everything. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of hushed voices downstairs. Angry whispers that carried through the old farmhouse walls like smoke. I checked my phone, 6:47 a.m. Mom's breakfast shift at the diner didn't start until 8, so she should still be asleep. I crept halfway down the stairs and heard Dad's voice, tight with desperation. Linda, I need you to understand the situation here. Jessica is 19 years old and she's making accusations that could destroy our family. My blood went cold. He was talking to Aunt Linda, Mom's sister. The one Mom had said she was going to call about legal advice. No, Karen doesn't know I'm calling you, Dad continued. But I thought you should hear my side before she fills your head with. The phone was yanked away from his hand. Mom stood in the kitchen doorway in her bathrobe, her hair still messy from sleep, holding the cordless phone like a weapon. Linda. This is Karen. Please disregard whatever my husband just told you. I'll call you back in 10 minutes with the real story. She hung up and turned to face Dad, her eyes blazing. How dare you? Karen, I was trying to protect our family's reputation. By calling my sister at 6:30 in the morning to spin lies about our daughter. Mom's voice could have cut glass. What exactly did you tell Linda about Jessica? I came down the rest of the stairs, not bothering to hide that I'd been listening. Dad noticed me and his face went white. I was explaining that Jessica misunderstood some financial documents. Dad, I interrupted, did you just try to convince Aunt Linda that I'm lying about the bank statements? The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the voices, still in her pajamas with her hair in a messy bun. What's going on? She asked, but nobody answered. Mom walked to the kitchen table where Dad's laptop sat closed. Robert, I want you to open your computer and show me every account you have. All of them. Right now. Karen, that's not. Right now, or I'm calling Linda back and asking her to recommend a forensic accountant. The threat hit Dad like a physical blow. A forensic accountant would find everything, every hidden account, every secret transaction, every lie he built over the past 8 years. Fine, he said, his voice hollow. But I want you to understand that everything I did was to protect this family. He opened the laptop and I watched his fingers hesitate over the keyboard. Even now, even caught red-handed, he was calculating how much to reveal and how much to keep hidden. All of it, Robert, Mom said, reading his hesitation perfectly. Every account, every investment, every penny. Because I promise you, if I find out later that you're still lying to me, this conversation will be happening in a lawyer's office. Dad's hands were shaking as he pulled up his bank's website. The first account that appeared made Emma gasp from the stairway. It showed a balance of $347,891.15. That's the Wells Fargo savings, Dad said quietly. What else? Mom's voice was steady, but I could see her knuckles were white where she gripped the back of his chair. Another click. Investment account, $293,847.33. Another click. Secondary savings account, $89,432.67. Jesus Christ, Emma whispered. Language, Dad said automatically, then seemed to realize how absurd that was given the circumstances. Mom leaned closer to the screen. Robert, this investment account shows regular contributions going back 12 years. 12 years. We've been married for 18. I started saving before Emma was born. You started hoarding before Emma was born, I corrected. While Mom was pregnant and worried about doctor bills. Dad pulled up another screen without being asked, a college savings account with Emma's name on it containing $67,892.15. Emma made a sound like she'd been punched. That's my name on there. I've been saving for your education since you were born, Dad said, finally looking at her. It's a 529 plan. Tax advantaged. Then why did you tell me art school was unrealistic? Emma's voice cracked. Why did you let me think I couldn't afford college? The total was approaching $800,000, but Dad wasn't done. Another click revealed a CD account, $45,000. Another click showed a money market account, $23,567. Stop, Mom said suddenly. Just stop. She walked to the kitchen window and stared out at our backyard, the garden where she'd grown vegetables the past 3 summers to save on grocery bills, the clothesline where she hung our laundry because she said the dryer used too much electricity. How much? She asked without turning around. Total. How much money have you been hiding while I worked myself sick? Dad's voice was barely a whisper, including the retirement accounts. About $1.2 million. $1.2 million. Emma sat down hard on the stairs. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Over $1 million while Mom had cried over a $48 prom dress at Goodwill. I need you to leave, Mom said, still facing the window. Right now. Go to your brother's house, go to a motel, I don't care. But I can't look at you anymore today. Karen, please. Get out. She turned around, and I'd never seen her look so broken and furious at the same time. Take whatever you need for a few days and leave. The girls and I need time to process this without you here trying to justify it. Dad looked around the kitchen like he was seeing it for the first time, the coupon organizer on the counter, Mom's expense notebook still open from last night, the generic cereal boxes lined up on top of the refrigerator like monuments to unnecessary sacrifice. This is still my house, he said finally. Actually, Mom replied, her voice deadly calm, according to county records, this house is in both our names. Which means I have every legal right to ask you to leave. And if you refuse, I'll call the police and tell them I feel unsafe with you here. Dad flinched like she'd slapped him. Unsafe. Karen, I've never laid a hand on you. No, but you've been lying to me for 8 years. And after this morning's phone call to my sister, I don't trust you not to try to control the narrative before I can figure out what I want to do. She was right, and we all knew it. Dad's call to Aunt Linda proved he was already working on damage control, already trying to frame this as something other than what it was. He closed the laptop slowly and stood up. I'll pack a bag. As he walked past Emma on the stairs, she pressed herself against the wall like she didn't want him to touch her. The gesture was small, but it hit him like a physical blow. He started. Don't, Emma said quietly. Just don't, Dad. 20 minutes later, we watched his truck pull out of the driveway, leaving the 3 of us alone with the wreckage of everything we thought we knew about our lives. 3 hours after Dad left, Emma and I were sitting at the kitchen table with Mom's laptop, trying to make sense of our new reality. Mom had called in sick to the diner, the first time she'd missed a shift in 2 years, and was on the phone with Aunt Linda getting the names of divorce attorneys. Look at this, Emma said, pointing at the screen. She'd been digging through Dad's email account while Mom was distracted. He's got automatic alerts set up for all these investment accounts. Look at the dates on these emails, Jess. I leaned over her shoulder and felt my stomach drop. Investment alerts going back years, sometimes multiple emails per day. Stock dividends, bond interest, account balance notifications. All sent to an email address I'd never seen before, mitchell.finances@gmail.com. He created a whole separate email account just for hiding money from us, I said. Emma scrolled down, her face getting paler. There's more. Look at this one from last March. She clicked on an email with the subject line, Inheritance Distribution, Final Payment. I read over her shoulder as the details loaded. Holy shit, I breathed. Language, Emma said automatically, then laughed bitterly. Sorry, I sound like him. The email was from a law firm in Pittsburgh, confirming the final distribution of his Uncle Frank's estate. Amount, $127,000. The date was March 15th, 2 weeks before Dad had told me he couldn't help with my spring tuition payment because money was tighter than ever. Emma, do you remember Uncle Frank dying? Yeah, last winter. Dad said he left everything to some animal charity. Emma's voice was hollow. We sent a sympathy card instead of flowers because Dad said Uncle Frank would have preferred a donation to the Humane Society. I felt sick. How much do you want to bet Dad never made that donation? Emma kept scrolling, finding more emails. Investment account notifications, bank alerts, even receipts for financial advisor consultations. A whole secret financial life that Dad had been living while watching Mom count pennies. Girls. Mom appeared in the kitchen doorway, her phone call with Aunt Linda finished. I need to show you something. She sat down with us and pulled up the notes app on her phone. I've been making a list of lies, things your father told us about money that we now know weren't true. Her voice was steadier than it had been all morning, but I could see the exhaustion around her eyes. Do you want to hear some of these? Emma and I nodded. Last Christmas, when Emma wanted those professional art markers, Dad said they were $60 we couldn't spare. That same week, he deposited an $8,000 dividend payment into his secret account. Emma made a small wounded sound. 2 summers ago, when Jessica needed her wisdom teeth out, Dad said we'd have to wait until his insurance year renewed because the timing was bad financially. He had $400,000 in liquid savings. I remembered that summer. 6 months of jaw pain because we were supposedly too broke for oral surgery. I'd lived on ibuprofen and soft foods while Dad knew he could write a check for the full procedure without even noticing the expense. And the vacation, Mom continued, her voice getting harder. 3 years ago, when Emma begged us to go to Disney World like her friend Sarah's family, Dad sat her down and explained how vacation money was a luxury we couldn't afford because my hours at the diner had been cut. My hours were never cut, Mom added, looking directly at Emma. That was another lie. He just didn't want to spend the money on our family when he could add it to his precious investment accounts instead. Emma was crying now, quietly but steadily. Not the dramatic tears of a teenager, but the deep, hurt crying of someone whose trust had been fundamentally broken. Mom, I said carefully, what did Aunt Linda say about the legal stuff? Mom glanced at Emma, then back at me. She's setting up a consultation with a divorce attorney for Monday morning. She also gave me the name of a financial forensics expert who specializes in cases where one spouse has been hiding assets. The words, divorce attorney, hung in the kitchen like a bomb that had just gone off. Are you really going to divorce him? Emma asked through her tears. Mom reached over and took Emma's hand. Honey, I don't know yet. But I need to understand my options, and I need to make sure that if your father has been hiding money from us, it gets divided fairly. The divorce papers were served 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon while Dad was at work. Mom had gone back to her maiden name on all the legal documents, Karen Elizabeth Walsh instead of Karen Mitchell. Seeing it in print felt like watching our family officially dissolve into paperwork and legal terminology. The financial forensics expert Mom hired found even more hidden assets. Apparently Dad had been skimming money from his paychecks for over a decade, depositing portions into accounts we'd never heard of. The final tally came to $1.47 million. Almost $1.5 million while Mom worked double shifts and Emma wore safety-pinned winter coats. But here's the thing that still gets me, it wasn't really about the money. I mean, yes, the money mattered. Emma got into the Chicago Institute of Art with a partial scholarship, and now Mom could afford to pay for the rest without blinking. I transferred to a better college and paid off my predatory loans with money that should have been available all along. Mom quit the diner and started taking business classes at a community college, something she'd dreamed about for 15 years. But the real victory was watching Mom transform back into herself. The anxiety attack stopped within a month of Dad moving out. The ulcer healed. She gained back the 15 pounds she'd lost from stress and started laughing again, real laughter, not the tired, worn-thin version I'd gotten used to hearing. She bought herself a car that wasn't 8 years old and didn't apologize for the purchase. Emma blossomed too, in ways that broke my heart thinking about what Dad had stolen from her. Her art exploded with color and confidence once she realized she could afford proper supplies. She started talking about gallery shows and art school applications without the defeated tone she developed over the years. Dad, meanwhile, fought the divorce settlement like his life depended on it. He hired an expensive lawyer and tried to argue that Mom wasn't entitled to half of his savings because she hadn't contributed to building them. The irony was lost on him completely. The judge wasn't impressed. Especially after Mom's attorney presented evidence of Dad's systematic deception, including printouts of all those secret emails and bank statements. The final settlement gave Mom 60% of the assets plus full custody of Emma, with Dad getting supervised visitation until Emma turned 18. He still doesn't understand what he did wrong. Last month, he sent me a long email explaining how the divorce had destroyed the family's financial security and how Mom was squandering money on frivolous education expenses. He actually wrote that Emma's art supplies were an irresponsible use of his hard-earned savings. I deleted it without responding. The truth is, our family's financial security was never in danger. Our emotional security was being systematically destroyed by a man who loved money more than he loved us. Who valued control more than trust. Who chose to watch his wife work herself sick rather than admit he had the power to help her all along. Emma graduates high school next month, and she's been accepted to 3 different art schools. Mom is starting her bachelor's degree in September at 35, and she talks about maybe opening her own bookkeeping business someday. I'm majoring in social work now, thinking I might want to help other families who are dealing with financial abuse. Because that's what it was, really. Financial abuse. And the most satisfying part of this whole story isn't the money we finally got access to. It's the fact that Dad's secret account is now empty, divided between the family he tried to control, and we're all doing better without him than we ever did with him. He had a separate bank account. We were struggling. Now we know the truth, and we're finally free.